Hey guys, Mike from Wigerts, and today we are doing our repotting video. I have our tree that we're going to repot today, as well as several pots that we're going to use for our repotting. I'm going to go over how to prep the pots, how to root prune the tree, and how to tie it into the pot when you're finished. So we have several pots here to choose from. I'm basically going to start by showing you how to prep the pot. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and prep our pot. We're going to look in the bottom first, and we're going to kind of assess our situation. As you can see, there's two drain holes and also two sets of tie-in holes. We're going to cover those drain holes usually with a type of mesh, and I have some here. It's a plastic mesh that we carry here at the nursery. This mesh is usually cut oversized to fit the drain hole to prevent it from possibly slipping and allowing soil to wash away. So as you can see, I've already pre-cut my two squares that I'm going to need to cover my drain holes, and you'll see that they fit right over it as such. So the next thing we're going to need is our means of attaching the mesh to the pot, and we use Bonsai wire for that. So I cut a few strands of 2.0 Bonsai wire here, usually a couple of inches long, but that will be determined by the size of the drain hole. And one of the ways that I like to do it that's simple is I make a little U like this. I place the U on the outside edges of the hole. You see? And you can see that those prongs are sticking out the bottom. So now I want to push down with my thumb and flip those prongs over. One that way and one the other way. You'll see my drain hole is now covered. So we have our drain holes covered. Now the next thing we need to do is put our tie-in wires in. So I've pre-cut my sets of tie-in wires here, but there's several ways to measure it, but it's usually based on the size of the pot and the size of the tree. So when your pot has tie-in holes in it, it's a lot easier. I can basically just fold the wire here again into a U, and I'm going to place one side through one set of holes here, push it through like that, and then fold it out this way. Okay. Then I'm going to take my second wire and do the same thing. So now that pot is prepped. So now we're going to go over what to do if you buy a pot and it doesn't have tie-in holes. This one is a nice Chinese pot, nice red glaze, and will probably be the pot that we'll end up using for the repotting, but it does not have tie-in holes. So what I want to do is the same process. I want to take my wire and fold it into a U. But then what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to stick the wire one end here and one end here and cross the pot. Now you want to make sure that you're right on the edge of the pot and not in the middle of the mesh, or else when you go to tighten down on your tie-in wire, you'll pull the mesh out as well. So we got it in on the edge of the pot there, so you can see if I pull, it's not pulling the mesh out, it's pulling on the edge of the pot. So that's going to be important. Okay, so now we're ready to repot our tree. And real quick, I just want to talk about what to do if you ever buy a pot that just has one drain hole. So what I like to do is basically take a larger piece of wire or a chopstick, a piece of wood, and wrap my tie-in wires around that with a couple of coils and run it right through the drain hole. So you're basically using a brace. Okay, I hope you guys can see that. Alright, and you can see that that also allows me to pull on that without pulling through the mesh. Okay. Alright guys, so first I want to go over some things that we're going to need in order to accomplish the repotting. The first thing you're going to need is your trusty pruning shears here. You'll also need a set of pliers. They don't have to be Bonsai pliers, but mine are. You'll need a root hook as well, or at least a chopstick. Okay, now this is a very important tool for our repotting. The last thing we're going to use is a little bit of mesh to protect the roots when we get to that point. So I'll show you how to use that. So I'm going to move this stuff to the side. One of the first things I want to talk about is prepping the tree before repotting. Everything is species dependent, and it's also dependent on the time of year. This is a sea hibiscus, and we're in spring, the warmer part of it, and so it's safe to repot this. So one of the ways that we'll repot most of our tropicals is we'll defoliate them about 80 to 100% for the first repotting. Okay, so I've already done that, and I've already modestly styled the tree. So now I'm going to take it out of its pot. And we have plenty of roots here, so we're going to be just fine on the repotting. I chose a very vigorous species as well, so we should have no difficulties. So one of the first things I like to do, I kind of just work with my hands, but we want to start breaking down that soil. Okay. The end result typically is a full bare root, so we want to completely transition all of this organic soil out. But for the video, I'll try and get out as much as I can. Alright, so when you get to a difficult situation when you're trying to comb out the long curling roots, this is where your root hook comes into play. Alright, so we've got our roots pretty well combed out. Looks like we have some pretty big roots that we might have to take care of. So these long ones that have been curling around in the pot don't really do us any good. So those are usually the ones we'll take off. Sea hibiscus are really hardy trees. You can take a lot of abuse, so I'm not really too concerned with how many roots I take off. Alright, so we got most of those circling roots taken care of now, and I forgot to mention this tool, but it's a tool you might need if you come across some big roots on the bottom. It's aptly named a root cutter. So on this tree we do have some roots that we need to take care of with it. So I'm basically just going to take those up as far as I can. And then I'm going to test the depth of my pot, so you can see where we're sitting at depth-wise. So we're actually sitting pretty good. I think that's good for a first potting. On subsequent pottings, you'll probably take care of more of those woody roots, but for today, I think that's a good reduction. So with that said, we'll go ahead and get ready for the potting. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and repot the tree now. The soil mix that we have here at the nursery is expanded shale, pine bark, and lava. So that's what we're going to use today. Alright, I first basically just put a small layer on the bottom. And the amount that's placed on the bottom is largely dependent on how the roots were reduced and what we're trying to accomplish. So I make a small mound in the bottom of the pot. Okay, and now I'm going to take the tree, I'm going to place it to one side of the pot, and I'm going to turn it down into the pot, into that soil. And the reason we do that is to really work soil up into that, into the underside of the tree, so we don't have any gaps, any spaces. So I'm going to turn the tree towards me, making sure that my front is adjusted appropriately. To keep one hand on the tree the whole time, and I'm going to reach with this hand as I fill with soil. Alright. And you can see when you get about 2/3 of the way there, the tree will kind of stand up on its own, and you don't have to leave your hand there as much. Okay. So now I'm going to take my chopstick here, which was our very important tool we mentioned earlier, and I'm going to slowly work some of that soil in. And do this before I tie the tree in, just to make sure again that the roots are protected and we're not just crushing them with the wire. It's just a simple up-down motion, maybe occasionally a side-to-side motion, but not too aggressive as you don't want to uproot the roots. So I'm primarily focusing on or getting soil worked under the tree and in between the large roots. Alright, so now I'm ready to tie the tree in. I'm going to go ahead and take one of my tie-ins and get it ready to meet the other one. Make sure everything's going to fit the appropriate way. Okay. And before I do that, this is where our aquarium tubing comes in handy. Take this and we're going to cut a couple of pieces. Here's my root cutter, since my scissors aren't handy. Put one there. So now I know everything's going to fit, so now I basically want to draw my wires across as tight as I possibly can with just my hands. And twist them at the base, like so. I'm going to do the same exact thing with the other wire. Okay. So the tree is tied into the pot currently, and it's actually pretty firm, but we need it to be more firm. So one of the primary problems people have with trees is that it wasn't tied in properly at the get-go, and you get a lot of shaking, and over time that will weaken and even kill a tree if left unfixed. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to take our pliers here and those little twists that we made. We're going to grab with our pliers. We're going to hold the tree with our other hand. We're going to pull up to grab basically the slack out of the wire, and then we're going to roll down. Now it's important that you keep that wire as straight as possible, because if you start turning at an angle, you'll actually roll the wire over itself and it'll break prematurely. So we're going to cross over to the other one, do the same thing, pull the tension out. Again, you can see the negative space I have there. I'll roll down on. Okay, so we got all the slack out. Now the tree is pretty solid. So the last thing I usually do to really secure the tree is lift it up, and at the bottom where our tie-in wires are attached, you can see here, we're going to go ahead and pull that out with the pliers. Alright, so just pulling down, and then I'm just going to turn to the side. Okay. And again with the other tie-in, pull down and to the side. So now the tree should be really solid in there, no shaking at all. So you can see. Alright, so the tree is very solid. And we'll cut our tag ends. Most people use a wire cutter. Like my scissors. Fold those down. Okay. At this point, when you get about 2/3 of the way up filled with soil, you want to go ahead and apply some fertilizer. Usually take maybe 1 tablespoon for a tree this size of our fertilizer that we carry here, and just put that in the top third. And we'll just do one final chopsticking just to make sure we have soil everywhere we need it. If you have any roots that are sticking up at the end of this process that are small, just kind of clip those off at soil level. Alright guys, that's our repotting video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions following up the video, please just contact the nursery, and we hope to see you in class.